Good morning. Hi there. Al has company today. His great-grandchildren are visiting, ages, I think he said 3 to 13 or something like that. Anyway, he's busy today, so he asked me to fill in for him. So we want to thank our music, Loa and I think Eleanor. They always do such a good job. Thank you, girls. Appreciate it. And our greeters, Zoe and Joe. I'm not sure about Joe.
I'm having a bad day.
Oh, okay. Well, we forgive you then. Thank you all so much. And the refreshments, Julia. There you are. Thank you so much. Y'all always outdo yourselves. Really, really good. And Joyce, did you do coffee? Always good. Barb, do we have any visitors?
We do, sitting in the front row next to Joyce. We have Miss Shield, Rose Shield.
Good. Welcome. Nice to have you.
Nice to be here.
Birthdays, we have 3. Joe Tucker, I don't think he's here. I'll mail that to him. Beverly Scott, I don't think she's here. She's on the 15th. And Norton Willis. And I don't see him either.
They're all out celebrating.
They're what?
They're all out celebrating.
Oh, okay. And there's no anniversaries. Do we have any joys? Pardon? Did someone say something? Oh, okay. Do we have any joys or concerns? Judy?
My sister is returning to work tomorrow. My sister is returning to work tomorrow, and she's driving, and she's pretty much recovered, and I want to thank all of you for your prayers and concerns.
Thank you, Judy. It's good that she's back on the road to recovery. Any more joys or concerns?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to give a big thank you for all the cards and letters and flowers and food and visits and everything. I appreciate it more than you can imagine. But I appreciate this class even more than that. The sustaining power is amazing. Thank you all.
Thank you. And Joyce, do you want to do your thing now, or?
Okay, I'm just going to start this around today for Mary D's reception on the 23rd, which is a week from Saturday. If I don't get enough, I'll pass it around again next week. But I just need cookies mainly, a couple of fruits, and some cheese and crackers, and cleanup help always. So I'll pass it around today and probably again next week.
Thank you. Are there any more joys or concerns? I thought I saw a hand over here somewhere. No? Oh.
Thank you. I appreciate you all praying for my son so much, and he's still in Dallas, and we hope to find out something else Monday. The cells have not been reproducing like we had hoped. He's in a lot of pain, but his spirits are good, and I keep asking, we keep asking, please God, help him. And if they may decide to let him go back to Houston Wednesday, and he's so anxious to get out of that hospital. But thank you all so much, but he's going to be better, I know he is. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Announcements, Lucille. Oh, there she is. Lucille has something, and then Jim will have something. Oh, and one more thing. Today is the Caring Place collection. She'll turn it in tomorrow, and they really appreciate all your gifts and what you bring. Thank you.
Last Sunday, the Bill Jones Scholarship Awards were given to 3 graduating seniors from our church. One of them is Luke Skeels, who is with me this morning. The other 2 have been on a cruise, and they're in Galveston returning, and they'll be here maybe next Sunday. I'm going to let Luke tell you a little bit about him. He's grown up in this church, and we've watched him grow, and we're so proud of him. And he's still growing.
Hello, my name is Luke Skeels, and I've been going to this church since 2005. And I ushered the 11 o'clock service and I'm a member of the FUMC orchestra. I play the cello. And I'm going to Texas A&M for college to study business honors and accounting.
Any questions? Lou, are you going to continue on the side yourself?
Yes, I'll play on the side, maybe a few gigs and things like that.
Okay.
Luke, we wish you well. And he can go to Sunday school now.
Luke, you make us smile.
Okay, you can pass those out. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, really?
Show me.
Nice.
You got it. Be careful.
This morning we're passing out a financial report on the Bill Jones Scholarship Fund. There should be one for about every 2 people. And if you do not get one and or cannot and would like one, see me afterwards. And, you're welcome to take these home with you. The Bill Jones Scholarship Fund was started in January of 2006. And it was set up to honor Bill Jones for all that he had done for the Contemporary Forum Sunday School class. And each year in May we give out scholarships to the young people in our church. And I'd like to give you a financial report at this time. Did everybody get? Where they?
No, I don't have one.
Okay. If you'll see there, beginning cash and CD, the money is at the Texas Methodist Foundation. June 1st, 17, a year ago, we had $41,870. During the year, we had contributions and interest income, $1,705, mainly contributions. As we all know, interest rates are not real good right now, so mainly as contributions. We gave 3 scholarships at $1,000 each, and Luke received one, and the other 2 recipients will be here at some time and visit with them for $3,000. So we end up with ending cash and CD at May 31st, 18, $40,575. And then financial information from 1/10/06 through May 31/18, contributions and interest income $61,075. We have given 31 scholarships at $500 each, $15,500. Less 5 scholarships at $1,000 each, $5,000. 2 years ago or a year ago, we started giving $1,000 scholarships because we had enough money in the principal, and we were receiving good contributions, and for $5,000. And then we've given away 36 scholarships for a total of $20,500. And then we have ending cash and CDs, $40,575. On behalf of the Bill Jones Scholarship Fund, we would like to thank this class for your financial support, your continued prayers, and support of this wonderful scholarship fund, because most of this money has come from this class. And if you would like to make a donation to the Bill Jones Scholarship Fund, in memory of someone, in honor of someone, or you just want to make a donation, just make out your check to First United Methodist Church. Down there where it says for, just put down Bill Jones Scholarship Fund and send it to Chris Baker, Business Administrator here at the church. Or you can see me and give me the check and we'll get it over to them. And again, we want to thank this class for all the support, prayers, and thoughts on this. We'll be continuing on as we continue trying to provide scholarships and recognition of our seniors, of young people who have been active in this church and will be going off to college. The scholarship will help pay in today's high costs. It's going to help a little bit, but mainly it's for the recognition that the hard work and dedication that they have had to this church and to the youth program. We've got 2 plaques. This one, we're now putting the second, filling it up, and it's being engraved, and as soon as we get everything taken care of, we will bring that plaque back. We've got to order a third plaque because we'll be going forward in the future. So if you've got any questions or anything, does anybody have anything they would like to comment about or any questions? Okay, again, thank you so much for your continued support.
Are there any more announcements? Yes.
It's not too early to start your Christmas plan. It's not too early to start your Christmas plan. The party will be on Thursday, December 6th. Set it on your calendar.
Good, thank you. Over at the McKinney Center, right?
It's going to be in the McKinney Center.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any more announcements? Okay, Lucille has our prayer and Ken has our lesson. Thank you.
Just a few comments before we pray. Investing with members of our church who are homebound or in a facility, it's always nice to listen to what they have to say. I have to smile because I did not know something. I went to visit Mary D, and we always had conversation, and we always ended with a prayer. But one day I called her on the phone and I said, Mary D, I'm going to visit John Baylor. Would you like to go? And she said, oh, I would. So I said, okay, I'll pick you up tomorrow morning and we'll go. I did not know this, but she and John had grown up in Austin, Texas, just a couple of blocks away from me, lived a couple of blocks away from each other, didn't go to the same school. Had I missed something? Had she told me something that I had missed? She said I hadn't. She didn't think she'd ever told me. But another thing, I went to the Caring Place and they had a tremendous sale going on this week. And I checked out a book on listening is an act of love. There are individual stories of people, and they compiled. A young group, very small, decided, why don't we go out in the United States and we listen to people. We'll set up these little listening stations and listen to people tell their stories. And they did that. It was so successful, they call it StoryCorps. And you can watch it on NPR radio on Friday mornings. This helped me so much because I thought, how many of us have stories that we could share? They might not all have magical endings or good endings, but they're stories of encouragement for others. Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we glorify you and we praise you, and we're glad that we can come together on this Sabbath day and maybe other times and enjoy your company, that we can in our own homes listen to you, read your scriptures, and pray with others. We're thankful for the learning experiences that we have and the sharing experiences that we have, all because of your love for us and our love for you. In closing, I remind all of us of Joshua 1:9. Be strong and courageous. Have no fear. Do not be terrified, for the Lord your God goes with you wherever you go. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Well, thank you, Lucille. I enjoyed that, especially the portion dealing with listening. You know, we all have things that we want to say and share, but all too often there's no one to listen. And so that is a wonderful devotional and prayer. Thank you so much. Before I start this morning, I wanted to give just a very brief report on the golf tournament that the United Methodist men enjoyed this last week. You know, it was an absolute miracle. The Sunday before was so hot, I had talked with one of the employees out on the green. He played that day, the Sunday before our Monday tournament. He said it was so hot that he almost melted into the green. Well, if you recall, that night was a stormy night, terrible night. In fact, it did a lot of damage down in Pflugerville, very close to where the golf course actually is. We went out there that morning, and it was a beautiful day, a clear day, but it was a cool day. I actually wore a jacket all day long. That I sat out there on hole number 7. But we had a wonderful turnout of men coming to play, and one woman, and we had a wonderful day of golf. There was a wonderful spirit among Christian men, and it was clearly a day for the First United Methodist Church. The reason I'm giving this report is that we have quite a few fellows here who played and who were with us that day and who contributed so much, and then quite a few Methodist men in here who have contributed to it, and then members of this class. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you. I think that we did very well financially, and we're going to be able to make quite an impact on this community and the Boy Scout group in our church. The other thing I just wanted to share, did you read the article in the Sun that came out yesterday? It was about the beginning of, well, really the medical community in Georgetown. And the thing that I read is that of the first 5 doctors to appear in Georgetown were 3 members of our church, and they're here today, alive today. And of the first 5 physicians to set up practice in Georgetown, 3 are here, and 1 is in our class, and you know Dr. Shepard. I read about that, and the thing that I don't believe I knew was that those gentlemen started the first hospital here. And later, of course, St. David's took this hospital over, and of course, they have developed it even more. To think that these few doctors actually started a hospital, and that we know one of them, and we're with him every week. And what a ministry, what a Christian ministry the practice of James Shepard has been, and I am just so pleasurable to have known him.
Ken, Zoe and I were in Southwestern in 58 and 59. 54 through 50. Whatever. I'm having a bad day. Well, after 7 years, I graduated. But anyway, my point is that during that time, Dr. Shepard and the other doctors, Gaddy and Bonneau, got us through several cases of flu, along with the school nurse, which often made it worse. But we had a wonderful respect for them during that time, and we saw in person the kind of gifts of their love and to this community.
So you all knew him as students?
Well, he wasn't a student.
I mean, you were a student.
I was a student, so.
We got there in 62. We did James, but
Yeah, the other 2, yeah.
Well, thank you for that. Well,
There's that word
yes.
I would like to just say how much fun it's been to practice here. It's a great city, a great group of people, and I've had great partners. So it's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you, Dr. James.
And also, am I correct, James, our first hospital that these Methodists helped form, it was integrated for all races at a time when it could have been a segregated situation early on.
Of course, I came in '62. At that time, it was completely separated, completely integrated. I think back in the 50s, there was, actually, we didn't start it by ourselves. Dr. Gaddy had a partner before us, and they had the hospital. So we just took over what was left, and we had a lot of support.
Kind of developed it.
Yeah.
Well, the wonderful thing is James and Judy, of course, continue their ministry today, their Christian ministry today. They mean a great deal to many people in Georgetown who certainly do value from that relationship. Well, yesterday Dixie and I went into Austin. It was her birthday, and so I took her to Dillard's. And can you believe it? She walked out with nothing. My pocketbook swelled with happiness. But on the way back, coming down Mopac, as I was driving, I had made a serious error going down there. I made a wrong turn, and we paid for it. It was almost impossible to get back, but finally we were lucky we did. So coming back, I was driving very carefully. I didn't want to mess up again. Well, as I was driving, she just commented, "Look at that big church." And so I did allow myself just to glance. I had seen it before, we had seen it before. There's a massive church off to the right-hand side there in Austin. It's what's called a mega church. And I want you to know that my comments aren't meant in any way to denigrate mega churches. They obviously make a great deal of difference in the lives of many, many people. You take this Joel Osteen in Houston, which you perhaps have seen on television or read his books. I don't know how many people belong to that church, but I mean, it's far bigger than most of the cities of Texas. So they certainly do meet needs, and if they meet needs and bring people to Christ, then who are we to, to question that or to be unhappy about that? Well, that is perhaps one thing that the author of a book that I'm about to talk about is concerned about, though. These super large churches, she's concerned that they're more or less taking over Christianity in the United States. The other thing that concerns me is the ultra-conservative group of Christians. Now, we're not talking about just conservative Christians. We have many conservative Christians in this class, and in fact, I'm probably one of them. But we're talking about a different kind of a conservatism that becomes a little different, quite a bit different, in fact. So she begins her book, and the book is Christianity for the Rest of Us, How the Neighborhood Church is Transforming Faith. Her name's Diana Butler Bass. I've had this book in my library for a few years, and when I got it, I read it. I can tell because I've got checks all the way through it. Today, the purpose of my lesson is to more or less inaugurate a study of this book. So I don't actually have much of a lesson today because I'm just more or less beginning this series, which will probably go for 3 or 4 Sundays, I would imagine, after today. So she begins acknowledging that the Christian right, and especially in the huge mega churches that, as she puts it, have more or less hijacked American Christianity. Some observers feel, in fact, that they're the only vital, thriving churches, and we're talking about the evangelical Pentecostal churches. By contrast, she feels that when we look at many mainline churches, such as ours, that we're deeply divided. Well, that is certainly true. And hopelessly confused. I don't know if that's true. But I'd like to think not. Now, our author is an Episcopalian, and she grew up in that faith in Connecticut. She was a Connecticut Episcopalian. Well, that sounds really pretty good, I think. She now serves as the project director of a research study on vital congregations, which focuses on mainline churches, Protestant churches, of course, that describes themselves as theological centrist or progressive, and in denominations that trace their lineage back to colonial America. So this book that she has written is a result of a 3-year study of some of these churches across America, denominations across America. And these are the churches that she includes in her book and in this study. The first one that she lists is the United Methodist Church, followed by Episcopal, Presbyterian, Lutheran, the United Church of Christ. Now, this is not the Church of Christ that we're familiar with here throughout Oklahoma, perhaps Louisiana. It is a larger national church that is actually quite a bit more liberal than the Church of Christ that we're familiar with. The congregational and the disciples of Christ, which means Christian. By the way, I'm surprised that Georgetown does not have a Christian church. I think I'm correct in that. Does anyone in here know of a Christian church in Georgetown? I don't believe so. That is why I think we have a few members of our church who at one time were members of the Christian church, which, by the way, is really a very fine denomination. Of course, they're identified with Texas Christian University. Now, with this study, I just want to set it up for you here, and then we'll get into it in some depth beginning next week. This study identified and selected 50 mainline congregations in which things seem to be happening, progress made, a deepening faith in Christ, and where they were adopting certain practices that to this group, research group, seemed to be promising. And interestingly enough, they were located across the country, across the whole country. They were able to find those congregations. It is true that there were more in the Midwest and in the South, but still there were churches over the country. The church sizes range from very small churches up to about 2,500. So therefore, we're not talking about large churches. She's really emphasizing, this committee is really emphasizing community churches. Now, I want to stop at this point and think about our church just for a moment. Now, this is the First United Methodist Church of Georgetown. And people from all over Georgetown and even Austin come to our church as a first church in this city. And yet, on the other hand, isn't it true that we're part of a community where we're located? There are houses and there's a neighborhood all around us. So, in a sense, we're like the first church. In another sense, we're like a congregational church, truly. One of the interesting things, though, and we'll get into it next week, is that for the most part, the people in this neighborhood, many at least, don't come to this church. So it is not a neighborhood church for them. On the other hand, of course, we do have quite a few people in this neighborhood who are members. You had a group of churches there as large as 2,500, but you know, that is not really a large church when you realize that when you're talking about the size of the church, you always have a pretty sizable number that's inactive, which is to say you virtually never see them. More than 300 individuals from 50 churches contributed to the research. That is to say, 300 people from 50 churches across the country contribute to the research. They were in constant contact with these people for 3 years. Now, of the 50 churches, 10 became key in-depth sites. One of those, by the way, was a United Methodist Church in Florida. In these 10 churches is where the researchers really spent most of their time. They spent up to 3 weeks in all of these churches over a period of the 3 years. They attended worship services, Sunday school, board meetings, prayer meetings, socials, retreats, concerts. They were treated, in other words, like members, like family. In fact, one gentleman attended one church so often that they gave him a pledge card. That must have been the Methodist church. Now, she felt like, as she went around the nation herself, something like a spy, running all over the nation, finding like-minded churches and churches that they were interested in studying, and who represented Christianity for the rest of us. Now that is actually the name of her book. I have it over here if you would like to look at it. Christianity for the rest of us. Now let's stop and look at that. Again, she feels like that the mega churches and the ultra-conservative movement of Christianity in America has pretty well hijacked Christianity. But she is interested in Christianity for the rest of us. People, I think, like most of us. And so that's what this research study is all about, trying to identify those churches like this who are flourishing, who are doing well, not necessarily growing, but who are healthy, vibrant congregations, and trying to find out why. What are they doing that perhaps all of us can benefit from? And again, they listen to the people sitting in the pews, finding out what made their churches work. The research journey began with a question. What happened to the mainline church? Now, we can perhaps make this more personal, and indeed we should. I hope in the future weeks we are going to be talking about our church a lot. We're not going to be doing it in a negative way if we have concerns, but we're going to be unearthing some problems that we may have and what we can do about it. And we're going to be looking at some promising practices to see how we're doing there. And we'll discuss those in just a minute. But that question, what happened to the mainline church, should be interpreted here. What happened to the United Methodist Church? If you know anything about the history of our church, when the United States was formed, the Methodist Church was one of the strongest and soon became the strongest. At one time, there were more Methodist churches in this country than any other church, most especially in the Midwest. There were literally more Methodist churches than there were post offices. And that went on for some decades in the history of this country. And so now we need to ask the question, well, what happened to the United Methodist Church? And also, not just the mainline churches, but the neighborhood churches spread throughout cities and towns. Because after all, as she asserts, many are failing, and even going out of business, if you will. There are those churches, though, as I said, that are flourishing. They are creating a new kind of a church. None of these churches had closed their eyes to change, and none of them practice business as usual. None of that at all. To her surprise, the research findings showed that many Protestant churches, as I said, are doing really well, and thus she invites us to read her report, which is the book. And so these are old Protestant churches that have found new life. One Lutheran pastor feels that mainline renewal is not rocket science. You preach the gospel, you offer hospitality, you pay attention to worship and people's spiritual lives. Frankly, you take Christianity seriously, as a way of life. Now, still though, there are certain practices that emerge as core expressions of congregations that are seeking to rediscover the authentic Christian faith today. There are certain practices that these 50 churches had that are making a difference. They are practices or signposts of renewal, and these are the 10 that we're going to be looking at. Hospitality, discernment, healing, contemplation. That kind of surprised me. I'm happy to see it there, but it surprised me. Testimony. Diversity. Justice. Worship. Reflection. That kind of surprised me too. And the last one is another surprise. Beauty. Now, it's my idea that we're going to take 2 and sometimes 3, depending on the discussion in her book. We're going to take 2 or 3 of these per Sunday and discuss them, and we might as well do them in order. Next week we'll handle hospitality and discernment. The discernment section takes the chapter takes quite a bit of space. Now, Bishop Wilson, I want you to help me here. Several years ago in the Texas conference, there was a movement, or a program really, that this Bishop Janice Huey promoted, where there were like 4 or 5 points that churches were to rally around for their improvement. Or do you remember that, or are you familiar with that?
She was a bishop in the Texas conference.
That's right.
Which I came.
That's right.
And you also had your membership for a while.
Right.
But that particular program was only for that conference. It did not go outside of the Bible.
Oh, was it?
No. And I did not entertain that within the conference that I was bishop over. So I really don't know much about it, Ken.
She closed small churches.
I do remember that there were I think she had 5 points, and I do recall that one of them was discernment. And most of us, when we look at that word, we have a question mark. Well, what does that mean? What would that have to do with churches? But it was a big point in Janet Huey's program. But I can assure you that our church in Orange took it very seriously and really rallied around the idea of looking at those 5 points. I am happy here to see that we have 10 points. And again, these practices are practices of successful churches. And so what I would like for us to do is to understand them. And then what I'd like for us to do is assign a grade for our church. How are we doing in terms of worship? Now you have to see, I'll just get into it a little bit. I mean, I've read the book. She isn't talking about evangelism. In fact, that word is never used in her book. I can tell you that. But she is talking about the idea of being a welcoming congregation. So the question comes, are we a welcoming congregation or not? So I look forward to discussing that with you. I'm wondering if any of you have any comments or questions about this. Keep in mind again that this was a research project. It took 3 years. And she is an excellent writer. As a matter of fact, she has written numerous books on modern day Christianity. So she's a veteran, and so it's a research project that we're going to be looking at here, and then trying to see if we can have a better understanding of our church and where we stand in these areas. Perhaps it might even indicate perhaps some areas of improvement that we need to make, and it's even occurred to me that if we came up with 2 or 3 that we really felt strongly about, we might even want to share this with the administrative council. Seems like to me that would be reasonable, that we as a group of Christians have studied this research project, and we want to suggest that maybe our council would look at this, and of course we'll go through Jim here since he represents us. Yes, Eleanor.
I think that demographics had a lot to do with the big churches in the cities, because as we were growing up, everybody lived in the same place, and you didn't go anywhere. If you had a child that went off somewhere, but the family stayed there. But then when we became more flexible as far as our jobs and things were concerned, people moving out of cities into different places, it left a void there. And those churches in the big cities, they really declined then. So and many of them, were torn down. They're beautiful edifices, but there's nobody there to go.
Well, Eleanor, you're exactly right, and doesn't it just break your heart to see a building that used to house a very vibrant, important church in the community? Dixie and I were talking this morning about the Episcopal Church in Orange. Joe, you remember where that was on Park Street. That was a beautiful rock church, still is, I assume, with beautiful stained glass windows. It meant a lot to Dixie because she was the principal of their day school for years and a kindergarten teacher there. And they had a thriving day school, and it was a popular church in Orange. But I don't know what happened. Their membership died off. It wasn't replaced with younger people or whatever, which should be a concern of ours, by the way. But today, the day school is closed. The building, in fact, is even torn down. And Dixie was informing me this morning she has a very dear friend who still belongs to that church, that they're having to share pastors. That is to say, they don't have a strong enough membership to employ a full-time pastor, so they share a pastor with another church, perhaps one out of Beaumont. But isn't that a shame?
Ken,
I see that.
I think Eleanor is certainly right about demographics. However, when you see these large churches, and we have some of them in Methodism, such as the church that Adam Hamilton is head of in Kansas City.
Yes.
People drive for miles to get back to that church if it offers something meaningful. I want to just tie this to your original word of welcoming. One of the things you'll find in these large mega churches is you don't notice immediately when you go inside the sanctuary. You notice the foyer and the large area in which they have a tremendous welcoming activity. And we don't have that. In this church, you've got 2 little foyers you come into. There's nobody really other than an usher or someone that's saying, glad you're here. But even if you say people to come over to another building and they're new coming to the church, they're not going to go over there to get a welcome. They want a welcome when they come to the sanctuary.
That's right.
And so I think architecturally, we're often at a disadvantage when we don't provide those welcoming rooms just prior to a sanctuary experience. And that kind of fellowship is something very important for a new person. Now, we do it in a Sunday school class.
Yeah.
But the new people don't always come there first.
Well, That's exactly right. I know several years ago, Dixie and I went to one of these large congregations in North Texas. And the thing that struck me when you drove up in your car, they had a huge parking lot, but they had men out in the parking lot who immediately, you could hardly turn your motor off, they would be there welcoming you to their church. And if you had any problems at all in getting into the church, they would help you get into the church. Well, once you got into the church, as you said, there was a large area, and can you believe it? You wouldn't believe it, but it's the truth. They had a Starbucks inside the church. And now all these people were walking up there at the Starbucks, getting their drinks and socializing and so on. And well, as people walked into the sanctuary, they all felt very good, of course.
Ken, one Sunday, there were laypersons standing at the bottom of the steps to this sanctuary in this building. And I keep wondering, were they volunteered or were they asked to do that? But have you all ever discovered that lately? Somebody does at 8:30 every morning. And we need that at 11. We really need that at 11, so we'll have to know what it is. So I guess, some of us have volunteered.
Well, good point, Zoe. I hope so, yes. Now, I look forward to discussing those two topics next week. This matter of welcoming, do we welcome everyone? That's one of the things that we want to discuss. Or as a matter of fact, in our practice and really feelings deep down, we really don't necessarily want to welcome everyone. Is that possible? Well, do we have any more questions or comments? Larry?
Ken, does the author equate megachurch with ultra-conservative? Your opening remarks sort of implied that.
Yes, well, as a matter of fact, she does.
Okay.
She does. But as Joe said, this church that we're familiar with in Kansas City almost might be considered a mega church, but as you well know, it's the largest United Methodist church in America. And how many lessons have we taught by its pastor? And it is certainly not ultra-conservative. Now, of course, you know, we need to be honest. There are large churches that aren't mega churches, but they are large churches that are ultra-conservative. I don't know if you're familiar with Crestview Baptist Church out on Williams Drive, but the people who go to First Baptist Church out on University, they think that the people at Crestview are radically conservative. So you have two Baptist churches, but they're very, very different. And it's true, I have known, we have people who live down the street who belong to Crestview, and they're lovely people. They're lovely people. Dix and I are very fond of them. But oh my goodness, you know.
In Tulsa, there are two large Methodist churches, and they are totally different.
Totally different among
In Boston
Methodists.
Avenue, we went there, and then there's First Methodist, and they are,
Really?
oh yes, very different.
Well, that's interesting. See,
They're very close to each other.
so we're not just talking about mega churches, we might be just talking about, you know, churches, period. Although Crestview is a large church, it's about I think the 7th largest church in Georgetown.
Ken, I wonder if you might define the term, because I think a lot of us are hearing the words, but we don't know what your definition of ultra-conservative would be. Could you elaborate on that?
Yes, I would, but we're not going to have time today because we're at the point of ending. But that'll be the first thing I'll do next week, okay? Ultra-conservative is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to line that out for you. Well, as we prepare to leave, I think we all agree that our churches are so important to us, and they mean everything to us. And a word was said in the early service by our pastor that meant a great deal to me and that I'm going to think about today. What will we do without being able to come to our churches and to find them meaningful? So as we leave this morning, let's leave with a prayerful attitude that God will be with us, particularly in our church, as we strive to bring His kingdom on earth. Well, with that, shall we go and say amen?
Amen.